I'm Jillian Armenante, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Damien and Ann.
Hello and welcome to another episode of You Might Know Her From
with Damien and Ann.
Hopefully you know who is who at this point. If you haven't listened to before, this is our show where we, best friends, longtime pals, and pop culture, enthusiasts, talk about stuff that we are interested in. And then we also shoot the shit with a actor later on in the show. And by later on, I mean about 7 minutes.
It was very exciting to interview this week's guest because it brought up a credit that was very important to me, and that is, of course, Girl Interrupted. So I was thinking about this before we logged on to chat today, and I found a detail about this movie that was heretofore unknown by me.
Okay,
we get a lot of great stuff from our guest, but I just wanted to read you the wiki, especially since Lisa Beach is the casting director that this week's guest, Jillian Armenante, shouts out. So let me just read to you some of the names of the people that were seeking out roles in Girl Interrupted, who ultimately never got the role. Reese Witherspoon, Christina Ricci, Katie Holmes, Gretchen Mol, Kate Hudson, Alicia Witt, Sarah Polley, and Rose McGowan. Rose McGowan said in print, "It's the only decent thing out there that doesn't involve taking your clothes off." The director, Jim Mangold, also met with Courtney Love to discuss playing Lisa and Alanis Morissette for a role. They don't say what role. Parker Posey turned down a role. Who was she going to play? While Lily Sobieski signed on to play Daisy, but dropped out weeks before filming began after receiving an offer to star in Joan of Arc. I'm going to say that was a mistake. Lily.
Do you think so, though? I mean, obviously Elizabeth Moss became a big star, but I don't know that it was had any connection to her singing downtown, like behind a curtain. I'll never be over that.
I mean, she was the lead in Joan of Arc, so I understand why she took it. It's just like, I've been thinking a lot, actually, about Lily Sobieski in the last month and where she is and how she's doing. But I was just like obsessed with the idea that it's like there's so few movies that feature multiple women in them that like all of Hollywood was a buzz because they were like, there's a movie with 7 roles for women in it. Let's get to cracking.
The film passes the Bechdel test, I have to assume, though I'm thinking about the ways in which, like, there are men characters, but the women have relationships outside of those men.
Correct. Yeah. I would say without having done an official accounting, it does pass the Bechdel test because Jared Leto disappears pretty early on in the movie.
Thank God Whoopi Goldberg and Vanessa Redgrave show up as authoritative figures.
Yeah, and somewhat nurturing. And then there's Mary Kay Place, of course, in the ice cream shop. I mean, the movie...
And Joanna Kearns! Old Joanna Kearns!
Right! It's a cavalcade. And obviously every woman was... Not every woman. I mean, Parker Posey turned down a role. Which role do you think she was going to play? Maybe Clea DuVall's role.
Brittany Murphy's role?
I'm not sure.
It's hard.
Anyway, it was just it was exciting to sort of see like, oh, everyone put their name in the hat for this one.
Folks, do you love Girl Interrupted? Have you seen Girl Interrupted? I feel like it is gay canon, so I feel like if you haven't and you're queer or queer adjacent, I think you should, and then we can maybe discuss it. Maybe we should start
I realized I started doing this thing where I was like, this is queer canon. And I was like, literally, there's just like more than 5 women in it. And therefore, it's like something that I think gay people would be interested in. How to make an American quilt gay canon.
I rewatched it recently, and I don't think it is.
I could tell based on the cover that it's not, but you know,
it's all like rooted in all of their relationships with abusive. And it's like, let's all gather to build a quilt and talk about all of the men in our life who are terrible to us.
Oh God, I didn't remember that.
I think
that was
so.
The unifying force.
I think
of that
if
film.
I'm not mistaken, take it as fact. Take it as fact and run with it.
Okay, so let's think about like other movies that like If These Walls Can Talk is about abortion, and If These Walls Could Talk Too is about lesbians. So that's a little better.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that is queer
things you
canon.
can tell just by looking at her.
I think a lot of it is rooted in relationships with men. It's like, who's blind and is like encouraged to go on a date.
Diaz?
Cameron Diaz is blind. Amy Brenneman is encouraging her to go on a date. Kathy Baker, I think, is like a widow or something, and like like her son is like, you need to get out there and date, and she's like dates a little person. It's like, so it's all, a lot of it is rooted in women's relationships to men. I haven't seen this movie in like 20 years, but I'm recapping it like I saw it yesterday.
Honestly, listeners, if there are movies that have all female casts that like run that, that sweet spot for Damien and I, which is usually about like 1992 to 2005. Anything beyond that, and it's out of our realm.
Well, you posited that
I posited, yes.
The Mummy Returns is like lesbian canon at this point, and that is two
Yes.
women fighting. I do understand that because it's like genre-y also, but I think you're like is Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, is it lesbian canon?
I'm going to say no, and I don't know why. Practical Magic, yes.
The Craft, of course.
Yes, obviously. Folks, give us some more like female casts. Is this gay canon? Is it not gay canon?
First Wives Club.
No, it's too straight.
I know. I feel like it is because it's like gay male canon because of like the larger than life women who play all the roles. But I think that because of the premise is inherently like about like men, that it is not.
I know. I think, okay, I'm glad we're on the same page because I hesitated and then I was like, maybe I'm wrong.
It's
but
different.
You're right.
I mean, it's different. It is like canon in like, it's character actors canon because like you get like Naomi Malone and Sarah Jessica Parker are like doing, you know, Maggie Smith, like they're doing bit roles.
You called her Naomi Malone.
Heather
Elizabeth
Locklear,
Berkley.
Stockard Channing, like they are all showing up.
Yeah. Oh my God. Stockard Channing at the beginning of that movie.
That is gay canon.
Yeah,
okay.
that is gay canon.
I know
That
it's
is gay
complicated.
canon.
It's complicated. It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's complicated by Nancy Myers? It's absolutely not.
It's absolutely not. But you know what? Glenn Close wore gloves to the Oscars, and I was like, oh, she's going to Diane Keaton route, and it surprised me, but I loved it. And God bless Glenn Close for really, we're not even going to recap the Oscars. We're not going to talk about them. I just wanted to mention it because anytime I think about Nancy Myers, I think about Diane Keaton and gloves. And Glenn Close saved the show like 3 hours into it. It's
and then people were like, does Glenn Close know the butt, or was she doing was she doing an acting bit? Is she that good of an actor? And it's like, oh, boy.
Both things. She's
do
doing a bit and she's the greatest actor. So, like, fuck off. Glenn Close doesn't need to save the day every single time. If you'll remember the Golden Globes where she made that drunk gif famous, like, she's been doing it for years. She's incredible. She's so game. She's the best in the biz. And I saw somebody tweeting about how she only gets shine when Meryl's not there wowing the room. And I was like, you know what? I don't even want to have the conversation in the same breath.
I know.
It doesn't need to be in the same breath. Glenn Close forever.
Forever. Folks, if you agree with us that Glenn Close is forever, if you agree that Desperate Housewives is queer canon, but Sex and the City is too straight to be, then will you please leave us a review? Leave us a review and let us know what you think. I love hearing from folks that tell us that they are enjoying what we are doing because we are really proud of this product. So if you can take those wonderful DMs and texts and emails that you send us and throw them into some version of a written review, whether it's an emoji or just like a thumbs up or an okay or a name of an actor that you want, like Elizabeth Berkley, that would be so lovely. It's the best thing that you can do to help us find more of an audience that hopefully we can quit our jobs or whatever and make this our full-time gig. So that was my little PSA in the middle of our rant about Glenn Close. And also, do you agree that Desperate Housewives is gay canon, but Sex and the City is not?
I think that's right. And I can't even point to exactly why, but it is. It just feels that way to
Sex
me.
and the City is all about men and sex with men or dating men or like love. And Desperate Housewives...
Desperate Housewives is a lot about men and husbands as well. But
it is about the relationship with those women and all of the sinister scenery chewing that's happening outside of it. Elevates it beyond just being about like relations. Like they all are trying to murder their husbands, which is cool.
Yes, the employment of like Laurie Metcalf and Linda Emond and
Joyce Van Patten.
Oh my God, and Harriet Sansom Harris and Alfre Woodard and
this week's guest who had a small arc on 2 episodes of Desperate Housewives. So I think we took it out, but Jillian Armenante did appear in 2 episodes as she was in like the PTA with Gabby, played by Eva Longoria.
I just want you folks to listen to something in this interview. And what you can't see because there's no visuals is that when Damien introduces Jillian Armenante to the podcast, he says it with an Italian flair because my beloved co-host over here is a Pennsylvania Italian and Jillian is a New Jersey Italian. And Jillian looked at him while he was saying her name and then she did the like, the like pinched fingers Italian paisan like capiche, like she'd made that face.
I didn't know
his
that.
pronunciation of her name, and it was one of the best things that has ever happened.
It's funny that you bring that up. Because I watched an interview where she said her name, and that's how she said it in the interview. And she was like sort of doing a bit, but also I was like, well, I want to respect her the way she says her name.
We always try to find the actor saying their own name because there's so many mispronunciations, and we do the best that we can trying to get that right. Because to me, it's very important that I'm an Ann with an E, and Please don't call me Annie. I don't identify as such.
You might know her from Judging Amy,
Vice,
North Country,
Kittens in a Cage,
Bad Teacher,
Fresh Off the Boat,
and Girl Interrupted. We are here with actress, writer, director, producer, Jillian Armenante. Jillian, thank you so much for being on You Might Know Her From.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited we finally got to do this.
We are thrilled to have you. I have to say, Jillian, you appear on one of mine and Anne's shared loves and a frequent topic of conversation. I'm not going to say on the podcast necessarily, but just like in life, it's like one of the things we talked about in a gay bar when we first became friends like 12 years ago, which is Judging Amy. You play Donna Kozlowski, law clerk and general oddball. And you start as Donna for 6 seasons opposite two women we care a lot about, which is Tyne Daly and Amy Brenneman. And I think one of our favorite things about Donna, as we were sort of rediscovering Judging Amy, is that she has the IQ of 163, but is extremely socially awkward. So your performance almost brings this like sitcom levity to this 1-hour CBS courtroom drama. So the question is, did you get free reign to develop Donna, or did they really give you a blueprint when you signed on for the show?
That's a great question, and I've been thinking about it lately. You know, they were all theater peeps. Amy Brenneman was the founder of Cornerstone. Tyne Daly hoofed it on Broadway. Dan Futterman, all New York actors, and I had free reign to show up and do whatever. It was such a tight-knit crew. The actors were great. I came from under a rock in Seattle. It was sort of my first gig, and they let us freely rehearse. They captured what we were doing. If I rode a Razor scooter to work that day, they'd be like, let's put it in the shot. Like they were very open and free and let us play. And because we were all sort of from the same background, we got to, well, first of all, I was hired for one line, and I came in and I did it. And Amy and I, who are about the same age, we were howling and pissing ourselves laughing so hard that the director kept yelling at us. And I'd never met her. I didn't know her. She didn't know me. But for some reason, we were just like, just dying of laughter. And then they had me back, and then they had me back, and then they made me series regular. So I literally went from like under a rock in Seattle doing the grunge theater scene to suddenly being on a network television show without having to go through the process of, studio approving and network approving and a pilot, because they were already going when I jumped on. But yes, it was very free, very lovely. We got to capture the chemistry and having a language with a bunch of Tyne Daly, good Lord. Like I would be in a scene with her thinking like, oh my God, because I had seen her in Gypsy and, a huge fan of hers my whole life and career. And I'd look at her and be like, I'm completely green with TV and film, but I can do theater, till the cows come home. And I would just do a Lotzie with, something coming off the bedpost and me trying to put it back before she looked. And, and the two of us just riff and she'd play it. And it was just glorious and such fun. I can't even tell you.
It was so great to revisit the show. We watched one of my favorite episodes, which is when Donna is pregnant and the birthing center burns down. And so she has to give birth in Amy's house, and they set up this kiddie pool. And your mother comes, but she's like a cold fish. And so then Tyne Daly is like stepping in as surrogate mother, and she like gets into the pool with you and helps you give birth. And I was like, this is an incredible show full of women, about women.
Yeah, there's so many stories about that episode in particular. They had written it so that Dan Futterman came in and sort of saved me. And Tyne Daly was like, this is not occurring. A man is not going to save you when you're giving birth. God damn it, we're going to do this. It was like 1:30 in the morning. And she was like, we're going to do it in one take. We're going to get in. We're going to get out. And we're going to shoot the scene. And I was like, damn straight. I'm ready. And it was the highest watched episode of all 6 years. So, I was in that tub for 3 days, freezing. It was glorious. I loved it. Every minute of it.
Oh,
honestly, that warms my heart to hear, because the show, going back to watch it, it was like Damien and I didn't know each other when we had been watching it. And
right.
When we discovered, I don't know that there's anything particularly gay about the show, but I guess it's because it's created by women, stories of women, and it just resonated in a way that I think no other CBS show ever has for me, frankly.
It took them years to fill that slot. It was created. It was about Amy's mother, who literally passed like a week ago, Frederica Brennan. And it was, Barbara Hall and Dawn Prestwich, Nicole Yorkin were the writers of the first season. And, and Amy as a showrunner who's, she was a 30-year-old girl running a show at CBS. It was just a glorious conflagration of just everything great, And I had come from Seattle where I only did things that I aligned with politically. And so I came down here and, was auditioning for these pilots. I'm like, can I really be on a pilot with a puppet? So I was just very fortunate to have landed in, a juvenile justice show that actually affected policy. We actually improved the juvenile justice system. So it was like, yes.
Well, that's what we were talking about. It was like, it's sort of a half courtroom drama, half domestic drama, but it's not about the carceral state. She's working in family court. And, Maxine is a social worker. So I feel like the politics of the show were completely on point, which is really, again, not what I associate with like an hour-long drama on CBS, like in the 90s.
Yeah, and being the comic relief on an hour-long drama on a
Yes. I just can't highly recommend it for any of our listeners who haven't watched Judging Amy. It is a smart, clever, impeccably acted, like 1 hour warm blanket. Highly recommend. You ended up working with lots of these folks in different iterations throughout your career. You worked on the show for 6 years. Was it a family? Meaning, was it sort of this familial atmosphere?
Yes. You spend 18 hours. When you're in a courtroom drama, the coverage is extensive. It's not like you have a 3-person scene, you go over, master out. Like, this is like, we shoot the judge, we shoot the court clerk, we shoot we shoot the gallery, we shoot the lawyer, we shoot the, so you're in that room 18 hours a day. And, my dad died while I'm being the comic relief on a show. We had pregnancies, we had babies together, the crew, the cast. You're locked in a room 18 hours a day with someone. It's a family, for sure. I spend Thanksgiving with Tyne Daly. I spend Easters with Amy. Like, we still are all like, oh my God, I love you. And we didn't get to say goodbye to each other. We didn't know the show was ending quite the way it did. And so, it's very like, oh, I love you, I miss you. So
Jillian, more recently you had a recurring role as Nancy, a server at Cattleman's Ranch Steakhouse on the NBC sitcom Fresh Off the Boat. So aside from Judging Amy, this is your longest tenure on a show, it seems. Like, having done this courtroom drama and then a network sitcom, like, do you have a particular preference or, place that you feel like your talents, are, I don't know, that you prefer to be?
It's so funny because I never dreamed that I would work in Los Angeles. I was a Seattle diehard theater, like, hanging lights and like, and that was my original family for my artistic birth. And I actually came to Los Angeles doing a play version of the Cider House Rules, in which there was a character as a big, angry, hurt lesbian who beat the shit out of everybody she walked into. And that's how I got to LA. And that's how I ultimately got the role of Judging Amy. But, I came up in theater and musicals. You know what I mean? So for me to be funny in Judging Amy, and then, I'm a mean lady in the movie Vice, in George Bush's administration, I did a very dramatic role in Private Practice so sometimes I'm very funny, sometimes I'm not very funny. If I'm a little bit heavier, I tend to be the lovable loser. If I get a little skinnier, I'm the tough cop. I'll take it all. I love this profession, and it's all I wanted to do since I watched Upstairs, Downstairs in 1974. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah. I get to do whatever they'll let me do. And so I had never done a sitcom. And that role was actually offered to me. I didn't audition for it. They're like, will you do this? And I was like, me? and of course, I loved it because she was a totally different character. She was just, as bright and snappy as Donna was, like Nancy was not the brightest bulb on the shelf. And so I was attracted to that.
We were so excited to learn that you were a theater person because that's how we feel about ourselves as well. So you mentioned Cider House Rules, which you did at Seattle Rep, the Mark Taper Forum in LA, and off-Broadway at the Atlantic Theater, directed by Tom Hulse, of course. You also received a Drama Desk nod in New York. Do you have any interest in things like Broadway, more regional theater, musicals, dream roles? Like, what are your theatrical ambitions these days?
Honestly, I landed here, and how life you're sort of flotsam and jetsam in the artistic stream of life. I started acting, and in TV and film, which was kind of new and intriguing to me. But theater is my first love. I have not stepped on the stage in 20 years. I have not acted in a play, and it kills me. And I don't know how it happened. I have written, directed, produced plays. Like even while I'm doing 18 hours on a CBS drama, I literally wrote and directed these plays that won the LA Tony. I wrote a musical that won the LA Tony. I won, the best production in Los Angeles a couple of years ago for another play that was written. So I'm always involved in theater. I'm directing something in Vermont this summer. So I'm always in the theater, but for some reason, the Equity Theater in Los Angeles took a very strange hit. There's a lot of rules, and it made it more difficult to produce. But I would give my eye teeth to be on the stage again.
And, in addition to theater, you've also written and directed and produced films, including the Women in Prison Send Up Kittens in a Cage, which you wrote and directed, and then the indie Stuck, which you directed and produced, and I think co-starred in, starring former, you might know her from Guest, Heather Matarazzo. One of the things, we love most about both of these projects is that they are about and star women. When you started directing and producing and creating these vehicles, was that the goal, to create work that was about women?
I had been directing and producing plays and whatnot, and Kittens in a Cage, I thought I was going to film in my backyard. I thought it was going to be shot in a week and I'd be edited in a month, and it ended up just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we just had so much fun. It was a script that was originally produced at that theater that I talked about, written by Colleen Conway Blanchard. And I thought, let's scare myself a little. I've done theater. Let's go to the next leap. And in Seattle, I worked on a lot of films. Occasionally I'd be like Tish pulling a shotgun, and someone would be like, "It's just like that actress." I'd be running sound, and I'd be like, yeah. So I thought, at a certain age, let's scare myself. And Kittens, we only had $47,000 to shoot that because we kickstarted it. And then, Tyne Daly's like, "I'll be in it." And then Joel McHale's like, "Oh, call me." I just started. Misha Collins was like, "Hey, can I do a little role in there?" People just added. Before I knew it, we had costumes from the Titanic. It just got bigger. We had monkeys and mini horses. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it went literally from me going let's scare myself a little to being distributed in 158 different countries on the cheap, because that's the world that I come from. And I guess I was attracted to it because I was a huge fan of, the lesbian prison culture. I grew up watching Caged with Eleanor Parker.
Yes.
And obviously Wentworth, the Redux. The Redux wasn't on screen yet. I actually met the actress who stars in Wentworth while we were filming Kittens. She's a friend. But I watched Prisoner Cell Block H. I watched, just the wrongful, funny. And I thought, well, it's so little money. The best sort of genre you could do with that little money is camp. Because you can sort of wink and nod and go it's 1957, but that car is from 1982. You could sort of nudge and wink. That being said, there are so little opportunities for women that I wanted an army of awesome women. And same with Stock. The script was super funny. I was introduced through New Filmmakers Los Angeles, and I thought it was great. It was a woman director. My friend said, "Hey, do you know Heather Matarazzo?" And I hadn't. I had met her. We just thought how great to have a woman lead. And then we fought very hard to make sure we were diversified in terms of actors. You know what I mean? We had a Middle Eastern lead, and we had, we just which I've always done for 30 years, all through theater. I cross-cast the musical Grease, much to the chagrin of Sam French. I've always mixed up, gender and color. And so, I just felt like there's so little opportunities for women of a certain age in Hollywood that maybe I was wielding my feminist machete a little bit.
Jillian, one of your most recognizable credits is as Cynthia Crowley in Girl Interrupted, a film that features this great ensemble of women: Winona Ryder, Angelina Jolie, Clea DuVall, Angela Bettis, Elizabeth Moss, and the late, great Brittany Murphy. Your character claims to be a sociopath like Angelina's Lisa, but Lisa says that Cynthia is just a dyke. That's her explanation.
Who surprised me, by the way. That was a little surprised.
That was an improv? That was an Angelina improv?
That was not the line. No. So you look at my face and I'm like,
wow.
Did she have the ability to say the D word to you? Was that kosher?
Shit, yeah. She can say anything. Well, homosexuality was a disorder until what, the DSM-3. So that would have, and those are actual people. So like that would have been based on the true diagnosis
in the moment. Yeah,
gay girl who was, Cynthia Crowley, who was in that institution. So yeah, she surprised me. Go look at that tiny little. Look at that tiny little.
That is wild.
We're all gonna go back and rewatch that now.
And we had some fun on that movie. That was pretty fun. It was great.
That's what I was going to say, because the chemistry is really good. So the story goes that Girl Interrupted was one of your first Hollywood auditions. Can you talk about that process?
Oh, yes.
And did you have to do chemistry tests with the other women? Like, what was that experience?
Oh, no. This is great. You're going to love this. Okay, so this is phenomenal casting director who I adore named Lisa Beach. And I don't know if she saw me in that play because I think it was before Judging Amy. Yeah, it was. So I had done this play, that Cider House Rules, which is 8 hours long. And I go from like a 5-year-old to death to like a 60-year-old. So I really I was running around in my underwear. I gave, blowjobs to people on stage. It was just like really like something, I was going to say something you'd sink your teeth into, but not very desirable following that statement. So Lisa Beach called me in and she basically read me, and I was building a set. I was producing a play. Yeah. So I drove in my truck and literally with the sides on the steering wheel, like driving to the audition, like crap, because I was in the middle of tech week. I was busy. And I showed up there and I did the lines. And she's like, I really want you in this movie. I saw you in that play. You're great. And she said, I want you to play the nurse. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah. I was like, really? And she goes, yeah, the nurse who gives her the injection. She says, put it in my aorta, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you don't want me to play the lesbian? And she this was 20 years ago, 22 years ago in Hollywood, where people didn't come out, let alone show up out. But I was like sweaty in my tech clothes, and she sort of eye locked at me and she was like, okay. And that's it. Then I spent 2.5 months in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, playing a lesbian. However you do that.
Oh my God. I mean, I love hearing that because for me, it's funny to reflect on that film because as a 16-year-old closeted kid, it was a very important film to me, but I didn't know exactly why. I had then bought the book and the soundtrack and gifted it to my best friend that I was probably in love with. Aww. It's like looking back, it makes sense to me. This movie full of eccentric women that are sleeping under the same roof together really spoke to me. It all makes sense. It was like you were obviously gay. Clea DuVall was pinging, and Angelina Jolie had just exploded on the scene with all of her stories about falling in love with Jenny Shimizu. The question is, was there a gay vibe on set when you guys were all hanging out in this mental institution together? It felt so gay.
It was pretty gay. You were not wrong. Yeah, it was. Nobody was. Ange was very, open. I don't know that Clea was a baby. She was a tiny little baby in that movie. Elizabeth Moss was in that movie.
Yes,
she played the burn victim. It was. Yeah, that we definitely had fun. Clea in particular and Ange and I really clicked a lot. We hung out. I think they thought I was younger than I was, but that's fine. So, but yeah, we wore our BDUs and hung out. It was great. It was fun. I'm very proud of both of them.
So, Jillian, you also appear in Nikki Caro's North Country, featuring another ensemble of amazing women actors, including you and Charlize Theron, Frances McDormand, Michelle Monaghan, and Rusty Schwimmer.
And Renner.
Jeremy Renner, a young Corey Stoll. It's Woody Harrelson.
It goes on and on.
I was only mentioning the women, but yes, I actually am into.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm very into Woody Harrelson and Corey
Renner
Stoll.
can be kind of a girl sometimes, but go ahead.
Okay. The moments of the women working together, there's a lot of great chemistry also. Was there any sort of sisterhood or community on that set?
Good Lord. Yes, there was. First of all, I was pregnant as hell when I waddled up the stairs to that audition. I was probably 9.5. I was so pregnant. I was trying to, and here we have the lovely Nikki Caro with the great casting director, Melly Finn, who really was the greatest. She literally was like a teacher in Minnesota till she was like 40 and then moved to Hollywood and cast all of the best movies. She's no longer with us. So Nikki Caro is this gorgeous New Zealand, like, hello. She's very lovely. She never raises her voice. And she's just laser beam accuracy. And she put this team together that we clicked. I mean, we're still buddies. Like, I'm particularly great friends with Michelle Monaghan, who, you know, I've been to Burning Man with her. I mean, we have kids the same age. Like, we're just nuts. And Charlize, we see her. We have reunions when we can, you know, maybe once every year or whatever. Charlize is a true leader, a true lovely sisterhood gal. And there's Franny McDormand, who, good Lord, is just solid gold. Michelle, I think she had just done like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yeah, it was like at like that moment she was having. Yeah,
they started sort of Mission Impossibling her, but here we all were with these mining women talking about a class action suit, drinking Schlitz, ice fishing. Like, we got to hang out with them for 3 weeks, and they were the real story, the women who had to deal with all this. And then we had the best guys in the world, you know, Woody Harrelson and Renner, and it was one of the funnest times I've ever had on a movie set. Say no more. I had just had a baby, and it was like negative 10 degrees there, and you know, there is a story that's probably far enough into the future that at one point we were filming in New Mexico in a mine, like, and literally when you're pregnant you can't drink alcohol because you have to pump and dump. And I was in a bathroom with Charlize about to like dump my breast milk so I could drink whiskey that night while my wife watched my baby in the hotel room. You know, I left when the baby was 3 weeks old and we were on the movie for forever. And literally Charlize is like, no. We poured my breast milk into 50 shots of Jack Daniels while Renner named it the White Dog. And we literally drank the White Dog to the point where, like, we didn't have a name for the movie. We were going to call the movie White Dog. We were going to, like, we had T-shirts made. Like, it was insanely fun. And the only reason why I'm telling this story publicly is because Nikki once did it in a press junket, and boy did my family read that. So now my daughter knows, who's now an actress. And I'll show up to do a TV show in New Mexico, and I'll still have crew going like, "White Dog!" And I'll walk by like, "That's me." So wow. It was hellaciously fun. It was super fun.
Yeah, was it fun to, like, you know, one of your most memorable moments in that film is, like, Michelle Monaghan, the guys, like, put a dildo in Michelle Monaghan's lunchbox, and then you're, like, throwing the dildo over, and then I was like, oh, Armenante is, like, having a great time on this set.
Oh, yeah, I had so much fun. And I had just popped the baby out, so I was, like, you know, all like, you know, I don't drink coffee, I drink, or, you know, have organic food, and suddenly I'm like, the baby's out, and I'm like swinging dildos and drinking, you know, White Dogs. So yes, it was very much fun. At one point, we took over a bar in Hibbing, Minnesota, and Woody Harrelson starts bartending behind the bar. I mean, literally, you can't make this shit up. It was so fun.
This is the part of the show that we call our rapid fire. So it's like, we're just giving you, it's more of the same, but kind of like, no, we're not even trying to have transitions here. We're just throwing a lot
at you. I'll go faster. I'll make it concise.
No, you can take your time if you want to, but it's really rapid fire for us because we're going like this. So, okay, in 2012, I was tweeting about Barbara Stanwyck, and somehow you and I had a conversation on Twitter about Barbara Stanwyck and how there were like no great characters in Hollywood anymore. Anne and I are queer. Anne is a lesbian. We love lesbian Hollywood, especially old Hollywood and the sewing circle. What is your favorite piece of old Hollywood lesbian gossip, if you have any?
Oh, good Lord. I mean, didn't Judy Garland and Mary Astor have an affair? That turned
Oh, I love from Meet Me in St. Louis.
That to me is that. Like, you know, there's the early old Hollywood rumors about, you know, Marlena Dietrich and Hattie McDaniel and, you know, all that stuff really, really sort of floated my boat early on in my life. And I'm the last of a large family, so my mom was a kid during World War II, and all her brothers were away at war. So all these movies that would come on TV, my mom would make an excuse so I didn't have to go to school, so I could watch these movies. So, and she just loved all of the stories and all of the rumors, and so do I.
Is Barbara Stanwyck your favorite, like, OG lesbian, or do you have somebody else that you're like?
I just love her laser beam accuracy, Barbara Stanwyck. You know what I mean? Her films she was like fencing.
Oh.
When I felt like a lot of other actors were swashbuckling.
She's such a cool, like, leading lady to me. I feel
really
like.
Is.
Because it's just like, it feels like things like that, like people like that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's not true, but
she just seems. She chose, like, Ball of Fire. And I mean, just her projects I thought were all really fine. And she died with her boots on. I mean, she went into the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Like doing TV. And she was one of the first big stars to do TV. And wasn't she?
Oh, yeah. She had her own, like, hour, the Barbara Stanwyck.
And she had like a Western that she was in. And so that was a huge risk for her.
Yeah.
So.
And Anna May Wong was on that, who was also like another like rumored, like bisexual, like lesbian actress.
Exactly. It's so funny because I came to Hollywood already out. I was saying this to my daughter, who's an actress, trying to teach her the ropes and stuff. And I said, the one mistake I did was, like, I just assumed to sort of, in an attempt to normalize everything. I met my wife doing theater in Seattle at Annex, and we moved down here, and I was never in. You know what I mean? I ran a gay theater in Seattle for many years, and so many people weren't out and then built it up and gotten a show, and then people were hunting them, and then they'd really, so they'd get this big pop. And I was like, I didn't want it to be a special, weird thing. You know what I mean? I wanted it to be like, this is who I am, and this is who I want to play. I came playing a lesbian in Cider House, so that role, she was a gay woman, and it was not something I felt needed a special announcement,
Like when you're on a set like Girl Interrupted, or maybe that's not even a great example. Like maybe like North Country though. Like is it a thing to be like an out actor when you're not around other people that are out or queer?
I mean, they all knew I was out because I had my wife, like, with my infant daughter.
You were established.
What I mean? And frankly, Charlize kicked ass when it came to all the marriage fight that we did. We went to Fresno to meet in the middle for marriage equality, and Charlize, because I was gay, I think I gave her a GLAAD award at one point. I made an announcement. I learned a South Afrikaan speech for her and only her, which was hilarious, and I will not translate it ever. So because I'm out, it was able to, have other people with higher profiles rally, because, the more you know, the more you know. The people who are gay who I've been with Alice since 1995, and I've been married 4 times to the same person because it kept getting overturned and kept getting overturned. So yeah, I just was never closeted. I had big old weddings and invited people.
We love you for it.
Oh, thank you so much.
You've said that when you were a teen, you met Katharine Hepburn and told her you were playing Bunny in your high school production of Desk Set.
Wow, that's so specific. Where did you get that? That's so good.
We do our research.
Oh, that's good.
As a young actor starting out, was there someone whose career you saw and you thought, that could be me, that makes sense? We both went to acting school, and this was like an exercise they gave us. And for me, I don't act anymore, but as like a 5'11", like gawky 19-year-old, like when somebody said Alice and Janney, I said, that makes sense, that's helpful.
Well, I never knew anyone like me. Well, that's not true. That's not true. I mean, here's the thing. I came up on the 1940s movies that my mom showed me. But then, during my time of wanting to be an actor, it was the 70s where, like, naturalism was hitting, and Meryl Streep and Jane Alexander and, all of those amazing actors. But I was always a funny, short, stocky, risk-taking person. And so I think the character actors that I was attracted to was like Marie Dressler in Men in Bill, or Dorothy Loudon just was my everything. And I won a Theater World Award, and she was on the stage, and I almost just had a heart attack because she was everything to me. But I always wanted to be the character actress. I was always had the babushka or the suspenders in the school play. I was never the leading lady. I was never the pretty one or the soprano. I was the alto. I moved the piano, and and so I loved the ones that got to rip it unfettered and just have a great time. And so, I always sort of felt like I would really start working once I hit 50,
Yeah.
And I was just biding my time to be Doris Roberts someday.
Yes.
Jillian, as you mentioned, you became close friends with Angelina Jolie on Girl Interrupted and are godmother to one of her sons. What is the best and worst thing about having a friend who's like super, super famous?
I have had many friends who have become super, super famous, and watching that arc and how society deals with them and how they deal with society is interesting. You know, as I worked with some of the finest actors in the world, my criteria for how I treat them is, would they be able to sit in a bar in Seattle with my friends?
Mm.
And so that is how they pass the muster for me. You know what I mean? Most of the finer actors I've worked with, you know, I mean, I knew Marcia Gay Harden in the 80s, you know what I mean? And we were like, if we pool our money, we could buy a backstage, or we could buy, you know, a bag of carrots. And we were like, let's get the carrots, I'm starving. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah,
you know, you come up, you know, actors are nomads. You come up through these trenches, and there's no good reason besides just wanting to do it. Later, when the rewards come, you know, that's great, but you're still the same person when you're sitting in the backyard with them. You know what I mean? And most of the good ones are the ones that stick around and do the off-camera work for you, the lumpy little character actress, and are generous. I mean, Ange was I've done 2 movies with her. I did Mighty Heart, which I auditioned for. She didn't know I was in it, which is hilarious.
And also Dan Futterman is in that as well, your co-star from Judging Amy.
Exactly. So here, me and Dan played roommates for years in Judging Amy, and then he's playing Daniel Pearl. You know, we're walking around India, like, it was just mind-blowing. And having come from Seattle, where I was in a microcosm for many, many years, to suddenly be traveling the world. And so, you know, watching that arc, you know, to me, it's the privacy arc that's brutal. And I experienced it as well, to a lesser extent, where I think at one point I was on the cover of some rag, I can't remember, and they announced that I was pregnant. And I hadn't told my mother yet.
Oh.
You know what I mean? And I was like, and I had lost a couple. So it's not like I wanted to tell people until the third one happened, which it did. And, you know, it's my redhead. So, you know, you get hits of that. You get hits of, like, you know, when my dad passed, I have his favorite T-shirt that I wear. It's now old and has holes in it and stains. And, you know, I sit on my porch and I talk to my friends. And then I've had people take photos of me on my front porch. Me, like lumpy little third from the left in the movie me. So I can't imagine the invasion of privacy that someone who people actually give a shit about have. You know what I mean?
Okay, Jillian, you appear in 2 iconic episodes of Grey's Anatomy as the wife of a World War II reenactor who has a bazooka shell in his chest cavity, and then, like, the bomb squad has to come in and all of this stuff, and that extends for 2 episodes. Your introduction into the episode has you screaming for what feels like 10 minutes. Did you blow out your voice from that shoot?
Yes! Okay. Because I did an 8-hour play with, you know, at one point Ethan Hawke was in it, Josh Hamilton was in it. Josh Hamilton, the actor, taught me how to fix your voice, because I was doing an 8-hour play Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So, you know, it's a lot, and I screamed a lot during the play. So it's an old trick to take grapefruits, rip the rind off, boil the rind, and drink it, and it releases the quinine, and it will bring your voice back.
Okay.
Oh my God. If I had this
level.
in my 20s when I was drinking all the time and screaming.
It is awful. My family calls it ass juice because it tastes so bad. But during Grey's Anatomy, I have a grapefruit tree, and I just brought a giant thermos, and I just sat and sipped the ass juice, but like the whole time, and it would bring, and I wouldn't talk. But yes, I was mute for many days after that. And recently, my daughter was like, "Is this you?" Like, she showed up with a TikTok of me, like, bleh, bleh, like, and I was like, "Yes, that's me." So I actually recently rewatched that to show her why I was all over TikTok.
It's a thrilling arc. I was like, I remember watching this in its original iteration. Then suddenly the bomb squad is there, and I was like, Jillian's not in these scenes anymore. I need to stop watching.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. That was fun.
Okay, you also starred as Karen Hughes, counselor to George W. Bush and Adam McKay's 2018 Vice. There were so many prosthetics in this movie since they hired Christian Bale to play Dick Cheney and Steve Carell to play Donald Rumsfeld. Did you get any of that wig and latex work? And how serious was the vibe on set since you had this like comedy director doing like a serious film?
You know, it's interesting because sometimes you're like, what edge am I writing? Am I writing that edge or this edge? Like, what am I doing? And, you know, the fact that I got the part at all was like, when I think tall, blonde Texas woman, I think get me the short, chubby chick from Jersey. You know what I mean? I was just shocked that I got the part. I was so happy I got the part because I'm so proud of being in that film. But being in a room with those actors and watching them ride that line, you know, was my way in. You know, and Sam was just mind-blowingly amazing as Bush.
He was very good.
He was a swell guy to be in the room with. You know, but it was a group of heavy hitters there, having lines with, you know, Christian Bale and who I was in Dark Knight with, but I didn't have a scene with him. Mm-hmm. And Adam was amazing. First of all, he thought I was from the South. He's like, "You're from Jersey?" I was like, "Yeah, sorry about that." I don't know. Yeah, sometimes if I don't know which way it's leaning, I just reflect what's around me. And so I felt very lucky and very fortunate to be in that room with that ensemble of actors doing that piece, which I thought was so incredible.
Did you have any prosthetics? They gave you the wig, but did they give you anything else?
No.
Okay.
Just the wig. Just the blonde wig.
Yeah. It was a nice wig.
Thank you.
Okay, so as you mentioned, you play a law clerk in The Dark Knight Rises, and your character sets up the end of the film reveal that Joseph Gordon-Levitt is Robin. Was your day of shooting shrouded in secrecy because of this reveal? And would you describe your experience with Chris Nolan as okay?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Nolan, incredible. It was the most amazing shoot because I wasn't allowed to see the sides, the script.
I knew you were going to say that.
A phone book worth of, you know, do not tell anybody about it. I'm hoping all these years later I won't get in trouble, 10 years later. And literally showed up. They showed me the script, and it was blacked out like a World War II letter to Bora Bora. So only my lines were there. And I was like, okay. And I like working with script. And then they took it away. And so I'm like, oh, shit, do I remember them? The great Lindy Hemming was the costume designer. I couldn't change in my trailer. I had to walk to set and change behind a flat so nobody could take a picture of us. And then we show up, and it was filmed in 70 millimeter. So it's a super loud camera, even with a Barney or a blimp on it. So it's literally like, oh, but you know, so I'm like, I don't know what his lines are. I maybe know sort of ish my lines. So he comes in, I can't hear him. He's like, and I'm like, my line. And then he's like moving his mouth. I'm like, my line? Like, I don't, there was like no actual acting because I didn't know what he was saying. He didn't even know what I was saying. I mean, we played the moment and it was great. I was honored. I didn't even know I was auditioning for the project. The casting director put me in it because, I improv some scene from something else. So it was just very, a little terrifying.
You didn't know what you were doing, like an untitled Chris Nolan film, or you didn't even know that?
Yeah, at the time, yeah.
Fascinating.
It was wild. It was like I didn't know my lines. I didn't know his lines. Couldn't hear him. It was just a riot. It was fun. It was an experience, but it was uber stealth.
Okay, Jillian, in Bad Teacher, you get to play drums in a teacher jam band with Justin Timberlake as the lead singer / guitarist. Who is your favorite drummer? We're just going to throw some out at you. Janet Weiss, Ringo Starr, Gina Schock, Debbie Peterson, Keith Moon, Sheila E., Stuart Copeland. You can name off the list, too.
What popped to my head was Stuart Copeland.
He's very good.
He's amazing. I also have friends that are drummers. My friend Angie Scarpa is in a band called Black Sabbath, the all-female Black Sabbath cover band.
I love it.
She is a total badass, so I'm just going to throw a shout-out to Angie. I kind of came up on the Police, obviously Led Zeppelin, obviously, so many come to mind. But that's a funny story, because that was Jake Kasdan, who ultimately got me the Fresh Off the Boat job. My agent called me and said, do you play any musical instruments? I said, well, I played the drums in 6th grade. And she went, great.
Oh, my God.
And so I'm thinking, Hawaii Five-0 or something, you know what I mean? And I didn't really play the drums. Like, I really played the clarinet, but I just played the drums once in one winter show. So I get there and we have a rehearsal, and Jake Casson's like, "You played the drums. I heard you're a drummer." And I was like, "Well, I mean, like, Tracy Partridge is a drummer." Like, and he's like, "Well, you're playing drums on a track with Justin Timberlake." And I was like, "When? When is that?" And I, for 3 days, played on a bucket in my backyard to learn that track. And I played it, and they kept it. They used it in the soundtrack. It was quite a time, because my acting teacher in college was always like, lie, and then figure it out. Yeah. And that was my biggest lie. It was,
very
but
good.
I did.
You look good.
I did. I look good, right?
Yeah, you look good. Jillian Armenante, thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like this has been years in the making and a total pleasure.
Oh, thanks. You guys are amazing. You have such research and laser beam accuracy. Your questions are really smart. I thank you so much.
Look, I haven't lost my voice in a long time, but if I do, I'm going to be boiling myself some ass juice. I feel like that was one of the greatest tips that we could have ever received from an actor. So thank you, Jillian, by way of Josh Hamilton, who I first became aware of, Care of the House of Yes.
Yes.
Which is a very important movie to me because I loved Parker Posey. She's been mentioned twice today. Also, I just was like not prepared for how much like old Hollywood lesbian gossip Jillian had. And it's like, I don't know why I didn't. You were tweeting about Barbara Stanwyck with her. And it was just like she had like Mary Astor and Judy Garland in her back pocket. I was like, yes, of course.
Were you aware of that tidbit?
I had heard something about it, but really, I really need to dig deep on Mary Astor and Judy Garland. Because like, I do know that Judy Garland, I was at the very least like a woman who slept with women. Whether or not she identified as anything close to bisexual, who knows? But like, I love old Hollywood lesbian gossip. It's my bread and butter.
Wait, you're saying that Judy Garland did sleep with women? You believe that?
Yes. No, that I am like, based on the biographies that I've read, there was like enough evidence that she probably like had slept with at least a few women. Yes.
I think it's also worth noting that in Meet Me in St. Louis, Marjorie Main, who is sort of was a famous lesbian of that era, plays Katie the maid, is played by this, old Hollywood lesbian.
Yeah.
And who was she? Was in a relationship with another actress?
She was in a long-time relationship with
Greer.
Spring Byington.
Yes,
Spring Byington, who was in the good old summertime with Judy Garland. And the thing I love about Marjorie Main is like she was also Ma Kettle, and that she was a person that Judy Garland like wanted to have around her. So she did 3 movies with her, including The Harvey Girls. But when Judy was fired from MGM and then came back and did Summer Stock, they were worried that she wasn't going to like perform well and she was going to walk off set or like was uninsurable. So they surrounded her with people that she knew and loved. And that's like Gene Kelly and Marjorie Main.
I love it.
Damien, we've been doing this thing where we connect this week's guest to next week. And I think that you've done the job today. Can you hit us with that?
I would love to. Okay, so this is take 2 of this. So Jillian Armenante appears in Judging Amy with a woman we loved, Amy Brenneman, who was in a film that we mentioned at the top of this episode, Things You Can Tell Just by Looking at Her, which also stars Glenn Close. We love her as well. And Glenn was in the Broadway production of Rex, an original musical about Henry VIII, which was the Broadway debut of next week's guest.
Ooh la la. That's beautiful.
Did I get that all straight?
You got that totally straight, and if you want to hear the outtake, just wait till the end of the episode. Folks, if you would be so kind, go follow both of us on social media at Damien Bellino and at Rodeman. That's RODEMANNE. Hopefully you know by now that You Might Know Her From is produced by us. That's Ann Rodeman and Damien Bellino. As always, we want to thank our consultants at Grumpy Entertainment, Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears, with all of that beautiful, silky smooth editing, again, by Daniel Sears.
And special thanks to Gang. All that music you hear underscoring each and every episode is by Gang. You can download and stream Gang wherever you listen to your music. Also, P.S., we're adding this back into the credit roll. Did y'all know that we have show notes for each and every episode and compiles very detailed lists of links and details from our interviews, from our intros, outros. You can find those at the bottom of each and every episode description. And they really are, if you're a person who loves an Easter egg, if you're a person who loves the footnotes, this is a place for you. Check them out. Jillian Armenante was on Judging Amy for 6 seasons with one of the objects of our affection, Tyne Daly, who played Madame Rose, as you and Arthur Lawrence would say, in Gypsy on Broadway in like the 89 revival?
I think it's 89. Let me just double check. Yes, 1989.
With Tyne Daly, who played Madame Rose, as you and Arthur Lawrence would say, in the 1989 Broadway revival of Gypsy. So, that musical was made into a TV film starring Bette Midler and Elizabeth Moss, who played a young Louise in the early part of the film. It's her and Claudia from Party of Five. What is her name?
Oh,
Lacey Chabert plays Dainty June. So, Elizabeth Moss... Wait.
You got back to Jillian Armenante. I was like, they were in Girl Interrupted together.
Hold on, I don't have the connection.
Hold on.
I thought I did. I thought I did, but now I lost it, and I'm like, maybe I didn't ever do it. It was somehow. Hold on, now I'm confused. Now I'm confusing myself. Maybe I did just do it back to Jillian. That would be so cool.